Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey. Hello beautiful people, in this video, we will talk about Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey game review. Set 10 million years before the dawn of humanity, Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey is the story of ape to proto-human evolution, with particular emphasis on the dangers that forced our fuzzy forebears into learning the skills that ensured the human success story. The first few minutes of the game certainly set the tone of what I was about to get into, tossing me, a baby primate, into an unknown, dark and scary world full of terrifying sights and sounds. I had no idea what to do or where to go, which was intentional in the game's design. A note at the beginning of the game states that while there will be hints along the way, players are basically on their own. That said, players can choose to have an on-screen HUD and a tutorial, but these options can be adjusted to varying levels, depending on the immersion that the player is looking for. It's hard to imagine that the overall experience of Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey differs much between the PC and consoles. I played on the PlayStation 4. The overall goal is merely to survive and ultimately thrive through evolution. Evolution comes in the form of a skills tree, which expands as players learn new survival tactics, like drinking water and eating non-poisonous vegetation, combat, exploration, and social interactions. Sleep also plays a part in progressing through the game, which allows players to move the time of day forward at an accelerated rate, which was something I did admittedly often to spend my waking hours in the relatively safer sunlight. Controls on the PlayStation 4 felt much like any other game in which the character is controlled from a third-person perspective. Traversing throughout the open jungle is very satisfying, especially climbing and running through the trees and branches that hover high above the jungle floor, not to mention taking in the amazing views from atop the canopy. That said, controls felt a bit less refined when interacting with objects and other NPCs. Hovering over object icons required precise aim, but I often found that my aim would drift from whatever I was about to interact with, making the slow, incredibly slow, grind even more cumbersome. I would be interested to see how PC controls fared in this regard. By the way, we are gathering gamers and gaming lovers like you in our YouTube channel RAYAROZEN, so it would be nice if you join our gaming community by subscribing our YouTube channel. We upload a cool game stuff like gaming reviews, different gameplays, top 10 games compilations etc. It is also an interesting decision that Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey is a third-person experience. Given the ability to hide hints in the HUD, one would think that a first-person view would add an additional option for more in-game immersiveness. This absence, however, does not take away from the overall experience. Taking place in prehistoric Africa, Ancestors throws the player-controlled ape straight into the jungle with next to no instruction. In fact, a recurring theme of the gameplay is that, to make it in this cruel primeval world, you'll have to learn from your mistakes, utilizing trial and error to craft tools, find food, and support the rest of your ape clan. The ultimate goal is to learn, thrive, and ascend further up the evolutionary ladder, all while navigating the dangerous world around you. The concept is certainly original and exciting, but this is recognizably a survival game at heart. Throughout each day you'll need to maintain your water intake, make sure your ape eats enough, and manage the fear that arises once you leave the safety of your clan. To scope out the environment around you, you'll be able to utilize and train your primate senses, sight, sound, smell, etc. Key objects to interact with will show up on the screen, as well as locations in the distance that offer new insight into the vast game world. Annoyingly, you'll need to stand completely still for this mechanic to work, but this arguably mirrors a wild animal becoming still and using its keen senses to build a clearer picture of the environment around it. When you're not stationary, you'll be able to try and make it as a fully fledged king of the swingers. As you move through the jungle and approach either the trunk of a tree or a rock face, you'll automatically begin to climb. Reach the top and you can leap from branch to branch in what are some of the game's most exhilarating sequences. Sadly, these moments are often marred by clunky controls and a few too many falls when suitable branches to land on become scarce. However, during the initial hours of the game, when you're unprepared for the threat of dangerous wildlife on the ground, finding safety in the canopy is the difference between survival and death. Speaking of the dangers that lurk in the jungle, your ape is prone to fear-induced hysteria. As fear of the unknown builds, you'll slowly lose control of your character, meaning that it's vital to monitor this metric just as closely as you do thirst or hunger. But what exactly is there to be scared of? Well, the thick jungle foliage hides a plethora of predators that pose a threat to unarmed apes. Exploration of the world is interrupted by prowling wildcats, crocodiles waiting in ambush, and opportunistic eagles who make survival a constant battle. At the opening of the game, these interactions are hard to avoid, and, with the game's awkward dodging system, it's irritatingly difficult to come out of these encounters unscathed. Thankfully, as Ancestors progresses, your tribe begin to learn new skills, and the tools you'll become accustomed to using, rocks and sharpened sticks, allow you to become more adept at taking on the dangers of the jungle. As the game revolves around the process of evolution, each brush with adversity will increase the accumulated knowledge of your clan. Once enough experience has been gathered, you'll be able to update the gene pool, essentially a skill tree, with new abilities. In the menu, you can build and expand neural pathways, bringing forward the best qualities from the previous generation and leaving disadvantages behind. Past a set point in the game, you'll also be able to move evolution forward anywhere from 15 to 100 years. These evolutionary leaps mirror the speed of real evolution, and, during the course of the game, you'll be able to watch your ape clan slowly become more and more human-like. Whilst this is a neat system, there are big drawbacks. Through bad playing or plain bad luck, it's entirely possible for your clan to be completely wiped out, forcing you to restart proceedings with a new lineage. You may have to reacquire the vast majority of skills you learned with your last clan, and this can be incredibly time-consuming and frustrating. Again, it does mirror what happens in the natural world, but there needs to be a better balance between realism and gamification here. After all, gamers often don't have the time or the inkling to redo the exact same thing over and over again. What this game does excel in, however, is incredible attention to visual detail, whether that be the impressively lifelike ape animations, or the thrill of seeing an aggressive saber-toothed tiger for the first time. The prehistoric world around the animals also looks fantastic, with the ecosystem presented as an endless tangle of trees in savanna that is begging to be explored. It's just a shame that actually exploring it can be so frustrating. Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey doesn't look or feel like an indie game, and it shouldn't with former Ubisoft developer Patrice Desilets at the helm. The graphics aren't intense, but they look professional. Textures are simple and there's no fancy graphical effects. There's nature, there's useful objects, and there's other creatures. To the game's credit, it doesn't hold your hand with making creatures visible. Much like in real life, enemies will prowl, stalk, and use camouflage to their advantage. It's easy to run through the jungle and not see the green snake lurking in the bush reach out and strike you. Or worse, you won't hear the tiger running up behind you until it's too late. Some care was taken into making important objects distinct from the rest of the environment. It's easy to pick out curiosities like dead trees that you can strip branches from, or edible leaves from the rest of the world. There's also more than just what you see. The player can use their primal intelligence, hearing, and smell to detect objects of interest, prey, and predators. Each method of detection changes the way the world is perceived until the character moves and breaks their concentration. But the graphics aren't necessarily where this game tries to shine. When focusing on listening, players can identify and isolate sounds around them. Finding and avoiding prey and predators is what this function is normally used for. Even the low rumbling roar of a tiger prowling can be picked apart from the background noise of the forest by a hominid on alert. There's no cohesive story besides the one the player tells. The game takes place over generations and millennia. Achievements and breakthroughs are rewarded by boosts to your score. This is reflected by the millions of years close to the present day your evolution has reached. Points are gained for births, discoveries, and exceptional achievements and lost for deaths. Ultimately, Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey is artistic, ambitious, and gives a praiseworthy amount of detail to immersion and recreating the learning experience of early hominids. On those merits, it deserves a cursory look by those who are intrigued by recreating that stage of prehistory. Those looking for a survival game ought to look elsewhere though. A great many games do survival and crafting better than Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey, and the game is more like a puzzle game in how it works. But even in that case, it falls short of being a good puzzle game as clues aren't given and experimentation and brute force are the only solutions to every puzzle. Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey has a huge gene pool of potential, but endless repetition and clunky controls need to be removed from its DNA. For die-hard survival and exploration fans, there is a worthwhile experience here. But for everyone else, this is a game that's so repetitive it'll drive you bananas. So, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you do like our video, make sure to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.